Are we live? We are live. Welcome to another weekly installment of KloobySnack. Snack time, Sunday night snack time.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
yes. Wait. Can you put my banner up?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Let me
yeah, for
introduce
sure.
myself. I am Abby Klubeck, graduating senior. Oh, that's you. In 8 weeks, graduating senior. Will be in New York City next year. Get ready. And this is my co-host. this is my co. This is my co-host and my dad. You may know him.
Yeah,
Yep, that's
yeah,
all I
that's
got.
me. All right,
You
were
got
you looking for the
the
banner? Yeah, all right, good try, good try.
yeah.
It's gonna get better. It's gonna get better. So, all right, welcome everyone to Sunday Night Klooby Snacks. This is where all year long we're gonna come on board and we're gonna read one of my motivational quotes, which I call Klooby Snacks. The original Klooby Snack we know is my wife's homemade cookies, but I wanted to catch up to her. I wanted my own Klooby Snack. And so my motivational quotes actually had some legs over the years, and we started referring to them as Klooby Snacks. And so after all of these books that I had written, Get a Clue in 52, made for social media, the public speaking edition or the original or the entrepreneur edition or the coaches edition, I've been able to come on board and do these live streams once a week for a couple of years now. And it's just a good reason to email the database. It's a good reason to stay present on social media, to build content, to stay in front of the camera, etc. All of those are good things. But this year I wanted to do KloobySnacks, and that's when I wrote to Abigail in. I
Yep.
invited her to participate in the project to help me whittle it down from over 100 KloobySnacks to the 52 that are in this book. But then beyond that, she got really into the project, and I made all the room in the world I could for her in the project, all the way up to co-equal, co-authors. And we're here every week reading the motivational quote, reading her journal style response to the motivational quote. And we're thrilled because we're in a new section today. Talk about that for a
Yes, we
second, Abby.
are. We just finished our 13 different loving flavored Klooby snacks, which is really fun. 13 whole weeks of that. And now we're into the next 13 weeks, our second of the 4 baker's dozens, and we're in the ego flavored section, which is so
Yeah.
exciting. It's like I'm so excited that we're in a new section. I don't know. It's fun.
Yeah, to bring the visuals into it, last week we covered Klooby Snack number 13, and I wrote the response to the last snack in that section. But as we can see here, there's room for notes for people to take notes on the first 13 Klooby Snacks. But the novelty, the sense of newness, is for this brand new batch, this brand new flavor, this brand new baker's dozen, as we've come up with jovially. That it's kind of neat the way it works out. Baker's dozen is 13 times 4 is 52. There's our year's worth. So here's a quick little glimpse into this baker's dozen, like a couple of keywords that kind of tease what each snack is about. And so unless you have anything else to say about this, I'm ready to introduce the section overall. Then we'll read the motivational quote. Then you'll read your journal style response. But before we do that,
I'm ready.
Oh, you're ready to go.
I'm excited. I'm really excited.
Okay. All right. Very cool. Well, let me go ahead and make sure I can see what I need to see here. There we go. And let me blow it up a little bit bigger. And let's go ahead and get into this. Ego flavored Klooby Snacks. I used to write a series of blogs that I called Mind the Gap. The concept was to bring attention, mind, to the difference gap between words that people use interchangeably. It is just a little bit of attention to the real difference between the words that can change the entire meaning, and thus full trajectory of outcomes in all kinds of settings, especially in daddy-daughter relationship. Examples include success versus achievement, jealousy versus admiration, hearing versus listening, sacrifice versus compromise, coaching versus mentoring. The difference in meaning between these sets of words is often the difference between effective and less effective communication. One of the Mind the Gap blogs I wrote was about confidence versus arrogance, and it just as easily could have been ego versus arrogance. So many people use the word ego when what they really mean is arrogance. That person has such an ego, or their ego is getting in the way, are examples that we've all said or heard a million times. But when we mind the gap, we realize that the word ego simply means sense of self. So arrogance might be an inflated sense of self or an overcompensation to a low sense of self, but ego is not arrogance. Sensing ourselves, having a sense of who we are, can result in arrogance, but is not itself arrogance. We all have a sense of self. However accurate, honest, or otherwise, we all have a sense of self. Arrogance is in the eye of the beholder because all the subject is doing is what we all do, defend our sense of self. When people accuse others of being arrogant, they are in that moment defending their own sense of self while failing to validate the subject's sense of self. I cannot eliminate the word arrogant from our vocabularies, but I can cook up a baker's dozen of ego-flavored Klooby snacks. Abby guarantees you'll get your defenses down. Enjoy. All right. So there's the intro. Before I actually read the snack, do you have any response just to that? This whole focus on ego-flavored and sense of self and minding the gap. Do you have any feedback on what we've covered so far?
I think before this and before we really sat down and worked on this project together, and you talked about ego being one of the categories. I still saw ego as arrogance. I wasn't thinking. I was like, I don't know. I was confused about how we would have 13 Klooby snacks on arrogance. But then you explained to me what you meant by ego, and I was like, oh wow. So that I don't know, that was something to me. Also, I never even knew. I knew about your Mind the Gap. Was it like
the series of blogs?
Yeah. But I actually had no clue what it actually was. Because that was was that before me? Or
No.
was it really young? I was really young.
I guess I believe. Well, I started conceptualizing Mind the Gap. Truth be told, I started conceptualizing Mind the Gap. I want to say around 2011 or 12. It started off. Yeah. If I do a search in my notes, I used to call it "What's the difference?" What's the difference? And I started making notes on some concepts where I had this idea like, oh, that gets used the same way this gets used, or people are using this word when I think they mean that word, right? And if we pay attention, what's the difference between this word and that word? I thought I was onto something. And then in 2012, your mother and I went to London, and you were around. Of course, you were 5 years old.
Yeah, I remember
that's when I was getting on the train all the time in the underground. It's like, mind the gap, mind the gap, mind the gap. And it got burned into my brain my first time in London. Now, in London, mind the gap is like a matter of life and death. They're asking you to pay attention to the gap between the platform and the train, make sure you don't fall, right? But in my blogs, it's a matter of perspective. It's not a matter of life or death. It's just
but I wasn't. I think I was too young maybe to pick up on that. I don't know. So then when you wrote the introduction for this section, that's when the first time I actually realized what Mind the Gap was, because I always heard it and whatever, but it never actually landed because I think because I was so young. But now I get it. I think it's interesting, and I feel like it maybe pick that one back up. That's really interesting to me. So
yeah, I think
I can offer you some more.
We can, well, I bet you we could probably come up with 52 of them if we really sat down and tried. And I bet that we're probably starting with a good dozen, 12, 13, 14 of them. Like I mentioned some of those examples. I love jealousy versus admiration. What's the difference? What's the difference between success and achievement? What's the difference between having a friend and being a friend? Right. And so I've written some of these articles, and it's definitely something we can get into, especially the way how easily your mind understands the difference when it comes to language and semantics and so forth. That's cool. I'm glad. Now, here's what's cool about it as well, is that last week's Klooby Snack, the last one in the loving section, vulnerable is not the same thing as threatened. I always had that Klooby Snack paired with this week's Klooby Snack, but I'm not sure if I ever wrote a Mind the Gap article about either. I'd have to go back in the archives and look, right? So in taken as one, and this is another thing where you're like, oh, I let you make the decision. Do you want to keep them together or do you want to break them up? And your choice to break them up actually got them into different sections, but they started off as twins or conjoined, nuggets, right? Either from Mind the Gap or a Klooby Snack. So vulnerable is not the same thing as threatened, ... and surrender is not the same thing as defeat. So there you have it. The snack is out of the bag for this week. Are you ready to get into it?
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and put up the banner. And then I'm going to go back to this, adding to stage. Yeah. And then I'm getting more fluent, I think. So here we go. So I'll just read it. Klooby Snack number 14, surrender is not the same thing as defeat. Go ahead, Abby.
Being vulnerable is hard. In any context or situation, vulnerability feels uncomfortable, threatening, unsafe. Surrendering is being vulnerable. Surrendering is letting your guard down, trusting that things will pan out or are even out of your control. Vulnerability, people confuse. This was written wrong. Vulnerability.
There's a dash there, you see? Yeah, just stop. Like vulnerability. People confuse surrender with defeat.
I'm so confused. Okay, this is edited. Okay.
That's all right. That's okay. Every now and then, remember, you wrote this months ago, so this is part of it. Yeah, this is part of the fun challenge of doing this every week.
I'm just not used to. I don't hyphenate. vulnerability, people confuse surrender with defeat due to the vulnerability that comes with surrendering. Surrender and vulnerability go hand in hand. Contrary to what people, including myself, automatically believe, surrendering is not bad. Being vulnerable is not bad. Vulnerability is what leads to love, connection, growth. As my dad loves to say, love is the willingness to be vulnerable. The refusal to be vulnerable is what leads to defeat. People fear surrendering, whether that be surrendering through apologizing, surrendering with actions, or surrendering through showing emotions. I personally have never struggled with showing my emotions, but surrendering through apologies has always been difficult for me. In my eyes, apologizing was admitting that I was wrong, not that I've ever been wrong. I'm so confused.
You are? It looks different than what you thought you would have read?
Yeah, I think that some pieces, I don't know, if I go back to the original one, I think that there's some differences that were not on my part, and I'm a little confused now.
That happens every now and then, and sometimes it is exactly the way that we got it to the editor and it's exactly what we approved in the moment.
Yeah,
but
I might have just been doing it fast, but
yeah. Things like that happen, and that's why, you can come up with new and improved versions. You can create like, I don't know about you, but I mark this up when I see things like, if there's a typo or, that didn't sound right. Like I missed that the first time, or even like we've talked about before, I'm more evolved now. I would use different examples. I wouldn't even use this story now. I would use a different story because, like I said, 17 years old, 6 months of your life is, you know what I'm saying? 1/34 of your life, where 6 months of mine is 1/106th of my life. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So there's scale right there in terms of, and then the other thing too is that at the end of the project, especially when we're under a due date, the way we were, because we wanted to be ready to go by the first of the year, we're so close to it, on a day-to-day basis that we might not see things. Our eyes may just, like, sometimes our eyes fool us. Like, we don't see the mistake because our mind knows what's supposed to be there, right? And then we glance over. That's why.
I think that might have been part of it too. I was like, what? The vulnerability, the very beginning vulnerability. People, I don't know. I was confused about that because I don't even know what was supposed to be said there.
Well, the other thing is, again, I think some of the references to vulnerability might be because originally this snack was so conjoined with the prior snack, which is vulnerable is not the same thing as threatened. And even though that's the last snack of the last section, and this is the first snack of this section, conceptually they're linked. Yeah. They're like twins, if you will, in a sense. But what about the content of it? Surrender is not the same thing as defeat.
I think. Well, I'm gonna hold on. You get my thoughts together.
Okay.
I have them together. Well, one thing, this is like not what I think. Oh, I guess it is. I think that in my eyes, like, surrendering, it's always like I lose. Like, if I surrender and I let my guard down and admit that I'm wrong, it's like I lose. The world is over. Like, it's horrible. Just like even if I know I'm wrong, it's like I can never admit that to anybody else because that means like I lose. Like I always associate surrendering with defeating, and then with like every negative thing in the world. Like, to me, like, just that, like, surrendering like that was just horrible, and it made me feel horrible. It was like with the whole like sense of self thing. It was like, I don't know. It was, but I think that's what the vulnerability thing comes from. It was like being wrong is, you being vulnerable, like admitting that you're wrong, and I would have never wanted to do that. So that was like, I don't know what I was thinking about when, like, with the snack. I'm sorry, my words are all like jumbled. I'm like all confused.
Yeah. But
I'm like all over. But you get what I'm saying?
No, I do. And what's the evolution then? You follow? What's the evolution? So like you mentioned that up front, like, and part of this is like, as your dad, right? How do I, especially in our moments when we're butting heads, teach you about this lesson? Right. So this is one of the exciting pieces when we get into ego, where I'm helping you understand what ego I'm helping broaden your understanding of ego to get you from arrogance. And then the other thing too, like, you're framing it right or wrong. Yeah. Right. And so you associate, but here's the thing: what your father wants you to know, right, is how much more harm you're causing yourself by hanging on to a wrong or a non-truth. Or, do you follow? So there's as we're going to talk about as we progress through this section, ego is sense of self. So Ego defense is when we attack or ignore anything that contradicts our sense of self.
Yeah.
Right? So the whole game that we're playing for the next 13 weeks starting tonight is understanding the instinct to defend oneself, but bringing that into balance with expanding one's self. So do you want to defend your current sense of self, or do you want to expand your sense of self to somebody that can surrender, like to the truth, surrender to reality, surrender to an other's point of view, surrender to listening instead of talking, surrender to asking instead of telling, surrender to, right?
Yeah.
Which isn't necessarily defeat, but it's an expansion of our sense of self.
Yeah.
But we have to
But I think that,
go ahead.
yeah, for me, I also, like, just being a stubborn person, it has always been very difficult for me to see, like, admitting my wrongs, or me actually, like, listening, like, being vulnerable. I like what kind of ties into the last section, but like, actually listening to you instead of, like, trying my absolute hardest to, like, ignore, or, like, just to immediately, like, reject anything you were saying because it contradicted my sense of self. But I think that maybe, I don't know if maybe this, I'm always going to say that the shift was us writing the book, but like, since then, I think I've been a lot more open to, like, surrendering, and which and I understand now it's not defeat. Me actually listening to something that you have to say is not mean I'm losing, or that the world is going to end just because I'm stubborn. I don't know, but there's been a shift there where it's like I maybe I haven't really necessarily thought about it that much, but I have been surrendering more without feeling like the world was, like, actually going to end.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I'll tell you from your grandmother, my mom, she used to say, well, she would say two things, so I can't really call them KloobySnacks. But by the way, just truth be told, cat's out of the bag, step out from behind the curtain out there. A lot of these KloobySnacks are me just me rewording universal truths that live in this world. You follow? And it's just me wordsmithing them and putting them into my own flavor, right? So I like that I have a unique way of drawing people into thinking about things. But here's how mom said this. Are you ready? Your grandmother, my mother. She would say, and they were combined. They could stand alone, but they were always together, like vulnerable and threatened, surrender, and defeat. Are you ready? She'd say, Jeffrey, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And at first, of course, are you ready? I'd be like, why can't I be both? Right? Like at first, I was like, there's no way you can give me the one or the other. I could be both. I'm right and happy. I'm happy when I'm right, and I'm right when I'm happy. And
me too.
Right? Isn't that funny? And then as I got older, and then here's the other one that she would pair with it, which I think is brilliant, right? She'd say, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And then she would say, pick your battles wisely. And then you've heard me say this recently. I've picked up on this term. I can't claim it. I've picked it up. I got it from somebody else. Is the juice worth the squeeze? Right? So when you think about like I think, and it's not a baseball bat, but it's my desk light. But imagine like two people like grab the baseball bat, right? So one person's coming in here and grabbing the bat. One person's, and they both want. And now, like, can you have an imagination for how tight they're gripping? The veins are popping in the jugular, and they're getting callous on the just rather than just like, all right, you go ahead, I'll hit next. Just like how wonderful it is to just let the other person hit first. It's okay, right? But you see this in children when they're young, like want to get to the front of the line or one of this or that, fighting in the back seat, who gets the first piece of candy or who gets to sit in the middle seat versus and people fight about the craziest things until we mature and we pick our battles wisely and we choose happiness. We choose happiness over righteousness, which is actually a form of righteousness. What do you got?
Yeah. I don't know. I think that this is like a new development for me. This ability, this superpower. So that's I don't know. I think a lot of that credit goes to you and goes to the book, and then also just me getting slightly older.
Time is involved.
Even though these few months for me, it's a big thing for me, but in retrospect, not that much time. But I think that I don't know. I think it's difficult to do. I think that It does feel like anytime it's like, when I'm in a position where I have to admit that I'm wrong or something isn't going to go my way, and I have to be okay with that, like that's always just been so difficult. And it is like, it feels like an attack to my ego and sense of self. But I think that understanding that, one, it's like the whole like the world does not revolve around you thing, where it's like, not everything is an attack to you. I well, most of the time when people have said the whole like the world doesn't revolve around you thing, it was always like like, oh, you think you're so important way. But I think that after it's been said to me so many times, kind of like realize it's more of a like, the world isn't out to get you. You know what I mean? Like everything, like not everybody is out to get you. Not every event in this world has been carefully schemed and like planned just to ruin your life personally. Like, it's like, yes, you matter, but like the world is not out to get you. Which is
like basically, I would tell you that my rule number 7. Remember, I used to have rule systems, and
yeah,
kind of
I've heard them.
Very similar to KloobySnacks, but right.
Yeah.
But understand this, just isolated, right? The only thing that anybody is trying to do is feel good. Like, everybody is just trying to feel good about, of, by, for themselves. Now, sometimes there's some people in the world that need to hurt or attack or bother or emotionally vampire on other people in order to feel good about themselves. There's some people that need to, right? They're not inflating their own wafer. They want to nibble off of yours, right? But by and large, yeah, people are too worried about their own stuff to be.
Yeah.
They're not thinking about you. They've got their own stuff, right? Yeah. Which,
and I think also, that was a thing for me to realize, because it was like, if one thing didn't go my way, or just something that I wanted to happen didn't happen as planned, whatever, like it was just like end of the world for me. That was my mentality for so long. It was like, this so and so's out to get me, like the world's out to get me, and whatever, anything that was potentially harming to my ego sense of self, it was like everybody else's fault and everybody's out to get me, and it was like poor me, like all that stuff. But then realizing that, one, like it's just really, nothing is really that serious. I don't know. It was just, I don't know. I think I just like matured a lot recently, where I've like realized like I don't let these little things that have nothing to do with me affect me and my sense of self and how I see myself and feel about myself and view myself. And I think that's what's like made the switch in being able to surrender without feeling like
defeat.
Yeah. I think it's just that it comes from
there's a balance. The hope is that it turns on its head. Like, not only is surrender not defeat, but surrender is empowering. Surrender is mind expanding. Like, so this is what we're talking about on a week-to-week basis now for the next 12 weeks after tonight. We're going to be talking about ego. All of these KloobySnacks now, they're ego flavored. We are talking about it, right? It's exciting. It's not just the novelty in the sense of newness, but yeah, the conversations are going to be heavy. They're going to that's what we're doing with KloobySnacks or the Integrity Game or any of my other work. Is I want to make accountability non-threatening. I want it to be easy and fun to look within. Right? How do we take the judgment out of it? How do we get self-reflective? How do we, like, again, back to profrontation instead of confrontation, right? Like, I'm holding you accountable. I'm not judging you. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just asking you to take a look at yourself and see if there's, an option here, right? And I want to do that for myself all the time. And I get paid to do that for other people, but it's just a fascinating journey to go through this with you and to have this platform and this thing that lives between us and through us now, that is the best teaching tool I've had in our relationship so far. It's just really cool. So I have to tell you, I took a sneak peek ahead to what's coming next week, and I previewed it already when I talk about ego defense is, emotional fight or flight response. We'll talk about that next week, but Well,
I'm not. You'll talk about it.
Oh, that's oh no, do you want to announce what you're going to be doing next week? That's fine.
I'm going to Coachella.
Oh, so cool. I've never even been to Coachella, but I was at the first couple of Lollapaloozas. That's a different conversation for a different time. Yep. But I think we've made it. I think we're here for tonight. Last call. Yep. Abby, we've opened up the ego-flavored Baker's Dozen. It's a neat, we can feel the connection to the last snack and vulnerability in the last section of loving flavored, vulnerable, etc. There's a through line to this new section. The Mind the Gap is introduced. Sense of Self is introduced. What do you got as far as last call? You're not going to be here next week. I'll carry the show.
Yeah, I'm not going to be here. I'm kind of sad, but I mean, I'm going to be having fun. It's okay. And I'm telling you,
you can do it. You can call in real quick on your phone and just say hello
from the desert with no Wi-Fi.
Okay, maybe I don't know.
It's not.
I've never been.
It's in the middle of the desert.
Yeah. Well, listen. You know how it is. If we do 52 weeks, if you miss less than 5 of these, it's still better than 90%.
I'll miss less than 5. I think I'm gonna probably only miss Coachella, and that might be it.
Yeah, until you get to New York City and your eyes are popping out of your head with all like 1,000 things to do. The city that never sleeps. I'm not jealous that you're going, but I have tons of admiration. Right, Mind the Gap.
I can commit 35 minutes a night.
Yeah, well, if you don't hang on a second, the cousins are getting ready to go after a great dinner that Mom made.
Okay.
Hang on, you guys. So listen, we're about to wrap up, so Abby can come down and give hugs. All right, so listen, if there's nothing else to talk about,
no, I'm good.
We got nothing else for this week. We'll see you, Abigail, in 2 weeks, and we'll see everybody else next week for KloobySnack number 15 in Ego flavored. All right, good night, everyone.
Bye.